She pointed her finger in my face the moment I set my bags down and announced loud enough for the whole block to hear that I could stay because she was the HOA president. Her voice cracked with claimed authority while I was still breathing hard from the truck. The way she looked at me like she owned the neighborhood lit a fire in my chest. But I kept my voice calm and told her the truth. This house was in her HOA. That answer only made her angrier. She waved a stack of half-crumpled papers like they were the law itself and threatened to have me arrested if I didn't leave. I glanced at the papers and saw they were unreal. Copy and paste nonsense with no signatures. And I did unmove. Neighbors peeked through curtains, waiting. She dialed 911 and announced a trespasser at 42 Pine Street, as if she were giving a performance. I reached into my folder on the porch and pulled out the original deed. My name was still on it. I owned this house. 2 police cars arrived faster than I expected, lights flashing across the quiet street, and Karen smirked as if she'd already won. When an officer asked for ID and my business, I handed over the deed. His eyes flicked over the official stamps while Karen spun a story about forged papers, trespassing, and harassment. A neighbor shouted that everyone knew the old owner had sold the place to me. And you could see the doubt spread across Karen's face. The officer asked Karen for proof that the property fell under her HOA. She fumbled and produced a printed Google map with a marker drawn in pen. Not an official document at all. The officer told her it didn't prove anything. Her face tightened and she stepped closer to me, sneering that people like me didn't belong and that I would ruin the neighborhood. Her voice cracked with rage and something else, fear. She shoved my shoulder and the officers immediately stepped in and ordered her back. But she screamed for them to arrest me, calling me dangerous and trying to brand me in front of the crowd. That was the mistake she made. I reached into my backpack, opened a small leather wallet, and held up a gold badge. A hush fell over the witnesses. Neighbors gasped, and Karen's smirk dissolved. I told the officer my name, that I had transferred here last month, that I had bought the house fair and square, and that now I was being accused of trespassing on my own property. Karen's panic showed in her voice as she insisted I was lying. But now, neighbors were pulling out their phones and confirming what they'd seen. The cops started to look at her differently. She tried another trick. She muttered about calling real authorities and then summoned 2 men in cheap uniforms who arrived in a black SUV, puffing up like they meant business. Karen pointed and ordered them to remove me. I didn't flinch. I warned them they were about to impersonate law enforcement. The real officers demanded credentials, and the men produced cheap laminated cards that looked like they came off a home printer. The officer flipped them over, jaw tightening, and reached for cuffs. Karen tried to insist they worked for the HOA, but neighbors had their phones out, recording everything, and I pointed to my porch camera. Every second of her stunt was being captured. The officer said impersonating an officer was a federal crime. Karen's face went white, but she tried to keep talking, claiming she was protecting the neighborhood and that I was dangerous. I stepped closer, quietly told her she had picked a fight with the wrong man, and showed her the badge again. The moment shattered her. As the fake security men were lined up against the SUV and the officers moved in, neighbors started to speak up one by one. She had threatened them over bikes left on porches, handed out fake violation notices, and tormented people until they feared their own yards. The block, which had lived under her little empire of rules and checklists, finally found a voice and told the truth. Karen tried to yell and point and call us liars, but the officers were done listening to her show. She lunged once more and screamed that this wasn't over, but it was. The cuff clicks were final, and the patrol car door slammed. People stepped out from behind fences, some cheering, some wiping their eyes with stunned relief. An older neighbor walked over and put a hand on my shoulder, thanking me for standing up when no one else would. I told him, quietly but firmly, that nobody should lose sleep in their own home. Not here and not anywhere, and that I hadn't served my country to be pushed off my own land. The officers told me they'd file charges: impersonation, harassment, false report. The list was long. Karen's fake authority lay in pieces at her feet, exposed by cameras and witnesses. I picked up another box from my porch and felt a weight lift. My house stood solid and untouched behind me, the life I'd fought for waiting inside. But even as neighbors relaxed and people talked about what they'd been through, I didn't forget the way Karen's hunger for power had made them small for years. I knew people like her didn't always stop scheming, so I kept my badge close and my camera rolling, determined to protect this street and the people on it. As the patrol cars drove off with Karen and her fake guards, the block felt different. Not terrified anymore, but free. And I told myself that if she ever tried again, I'd be there ready, and so would the whole neighborhood who had finally found the courage to stand together.